My very first memory of a Tourette symptom was when I was in grade 1, and we had to do our printing in the nice printing books. Remember the ones with the two blue lines and the one red line in the middle?
Yeah.
Does he have one go? Yeah. So I still remember vividly having to do my letters, and I was pressed, and I wanted to move my hand, and it was the only time I ever had that tic was when I had to do printing. And I would be pressing so hard on my pencil to keep my arm from doing this. And every once in a while I would lose the battle, and I would put a big mark across my paper, and then I'd have to erase it, and I'd have to keep doing that damn V. And I still remember that. The next memory I have was in grade 6. And I loved grade 6. It was my favorite year, and I had an awesome teacher. But I remember one day, him standing next to, he was teaching and standing next to my desk, and he said, "Stop doing that." I had no idea what he was talking about. And I looked at it, and he said, "That's sniffing noise." And he wasn't being mean about it, like my expression probably isn't capturing that moment, but he, and I had no idea what the hell he was talking about. And then in high school, I used to walk to school, and I used to have a step. I used to do like that. Kind of subtle, no one really thought anything of it. But then I realized after all, every once in a while I'd have to do this. And then I'd have to undo it. Right? And so those are my physical tics. I don't have any recollections of doing the sniffing and the throat clearing and stuff. That's in my repertoire now. That developed more in high school. But my mom said she always knew there was something. And she tells me that she told my doctor, and he delivered all 3 of my brothers, and he was Northern Ontario, moose hunting kind of guy, and my mom was being one of those moms, right? But then in high school, things really hit the fan, and I was falling apart, and I didn't even get it figured out in high school. I still remember ticking so violently in high school that I almost fell out of my desk. I'd lost my balance, and I almost fell out of my desk. So you're seeing me now, right? But so I was very animated, very Tourette, as I say. That's a word in our community. And I'll say to my family, "I'm feeling really Tourette today," and they know that means back off a little bit. Don't put too many demands on me for now. So I was really Tourette in high school and in university. So the whole, as a kid, my parents didn't get a high school education, but my brothers and I were taught, after you go to kindergarten, then you're going to go to the big boys school, and you're going to go to that school, and then you're going to go to high school, and then you're going to go to university. So I just thought it was just what I was going to do. I was going to do this, and go to university, and then get a job. So when I was in high school, and I had gone from being a straight A student, and then in high school my marks just sort of steadily declined until I just barely scraped through and got into a university. And I had all these struggles, but I didn't know I had Tourette's. All I knew was, everyone kept, Mr. O'Gorman, my math teacher, he said, "You know this stuff, you just keep doing silly mistakes." I didn't realize I had a learning disability. And so I struggled, and I took math, and I failed it, and then I took it again, and I passed it. And I took the next grade, and I failed it, and I took it again, and I passed it. And I did that 3 times. All I knew was I was hell-bent, I had a goal, and I was going to fulfill it. And I worked hard, and I created my own strategies without even knowing I was devising strategies to overcome my challenges. And then I got to university, and the wheels fell off my bus, and I dropped out. I was a wreck. I was so Tourette. It was like I had actually contemplated ending my life because I didn't know what's wrong with me, right? There's something really wrong with me. I would sit and punch myself in the legs because they wouldn't stop moving, and I would get these big bruises on my thighs because I was so angry at myself that my body it was doing all this stuff that I didn't want to do. And then when I crashed and burned from university, I came home, and I remember that night sitting at my mom and dad's kitchen table, and my mom's hand on my shoulder saying, we need to look into this. And that was my low point. So eventually I was diagnosed, and there's a long story there, but I actually kind of diagnosed myself just before the doctor did. Because they always look at the worst case scenario stuff first before they, she was a really good neurologist, and she did the elimination stuff, right? And then got to Tourette. And just before she did that, I was driving in my car, and I was listening to the radio, and they were talking about Jim Eisenreich. He was a Major League Baseball player for the Philadelphia Phillies, and I can't remember who else he played for. But he was a Major League Baseball player, Kansas City Royals. And he was undiagnosed, and he crashed and burned in the major leagues. And he dropped out of the major leagues for a couple of years. He got diagnosed, treated, and returned. And they were telling his story, and I immediately went to the university library and researched Tourette syndrome. And I went, that's what I've got. And then the doctor said, oh, by the way, you have Tourette's. I said, yeah, I know. Right? And then I got medicated, and I'm not saying that medication is the solution for everyone. I'm really careful, even on my website, when I talk about that, this is what I did. I'm not saying this is what everyone should do. I had medical intervention for my symptoms, my marks, and I ended up going to Laurentian University in Sudbury, because that's my hometown. And my marks shot back up to where they used to be for high school. And by the time I left, I transferred out of Laurentian. In my last 10 courses there, I had the highest or second highest grade in 8 of my 10 courses. And I got into Queen's University. So going from getting, to be honest, I got kicked out of the university. I didn't drop out, I got dropped out. That's how badly I was doing academically. And I got treated, and I was successful. And then I went to, near the end of my university career, I had a girlfriend, and we were living together, and she knew I had Tourette's, because I told her, but I was in denial, really. Because at that time, so that was the late 80s, Tourette's was starting to be known in North American society. And the talk show hosts were starting to bring people on the show who had Tourette's, like the really crazy ones, like Springer and Maury Povich and all those crazy talk show hosts. And they wanted ratings, so they brought on the most sensational cases with people mooing and barking and crowing like roosters and stuff. And back then, because I still had myself, that's not me. I'm not telling anyone I have Tourette's. And so my girlfriend at the time, she wanted to learn more about Tourette's, and she wanted to get me involved. And so she would leave pamphlets lying around the apartment every time the Toronto chapter had an event. And I kept, brushing them off. And I was teaching at the time. And some of my colleagues who were friends of mine were pretty close. They knew I had Tourette's because it was really hard to hide. We didn't talk about it much, but they knew I had Tourette's. They accepted it. They said, CBC did this show on a surgeon from Cranbrook, BC, who has Tourette's. It was really interesting. Did you see it, Ken? I said, no, I missed it. And then it was so popular, they aired it a second time, and I missed it again. Well, one day, my girlfriend said, she dropped the pamphlet on the table and said, Dr. Mort Dorn is coming to Toronto to speak. Would you like to see him? And I said, yeah, I'd be interested in that, because everyone was telling me how awesome he was. And so I went. It was my very first connection with Tourette, what was the Tourette Syndrome Foundation of Canada at the time. And I sat at the very back of the auditorium, because that's my safe spot, so that way I can tick all I want, and I don't have to be self-conscious about people seeing it. I sat at the back of the room, and he did his talk, and then at the end, he opened the floor up to questions. And parents are raising their hands left and right, asking him questions. And as an educator, and as a person who had Tourette's, I sat back there, and I knew the answers to the questions. And that was when I sat back there and I realized, that's why I have Tourette's. I'm a teacher. I'm supposed to teach about this. And that's what started my road down Tourette, Canada. So there you have it. Okay, so as I said, I have Tourette's and associated disorders, and I'm a teacher, and I'm a special education teacher, and I'm a behavior specialist. So if you look up my qualifications in the Ontario College of Teachers, it says behavior specialist. So I'm an expert. It takes years for you to come to a point where you can say that. Yes, I am an expert. That's what we're talking about at the same time. So I can look at all of you, and I can tell you, you are not loony. Okay? I know your family, your friends are going to tell you things, oh, no, 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 no. And they're going to make you crazy, and then they're going to, when they make you crazy, they're going to say, see, you're crazy. I'm hitting it, aren't I? Right? Yeah, exactly. That's my family. I know you're working hard. And I've seen, now, so I'll move on to my next little story for you. That's my family in a nutshell, or in a nutcase, as I would say. That's my family in a nutcase. So I have Julie and I are a blended family. I have 2 sons. And 9 years ago, I was speaking at this very conference here in Winnipeg, and I met Julie. Julie also has Tourette and associated disorders, and her son Nathan. Nathan is the one kissing Mom. How nice! What a nice picture. Our family didn't look like that. Okay, doesn't look like that at all in real life, in reality. But Nathan, when I met him, and I've seen hundreds of kids with Tourette's through the decades I've been associated with Tourette Canada. And Nathan at that time was the person most affected, or most profoundly affected by Tourette's and ADHD I had ever met. He was taking an adult dose of medication for his ADHD twice a day. He could not sleep in a bed. Because he would fall out of it. He would tick in his sleep, and he would keep falling out of bed. So he would pull his mattress off his bed and put it on the floor. Oh, what else? Oh, it's so funny. The stories now I can tell you. Julie, one day, she went to the bathroom, she came out, and he had, in minutes, had dragged all the furniture from his room and put it in her room. Or she would turn around and he had somehow managed to paint his bike red. She just go over here and the bike is a different color. And where the stuff that he would do, he was such a handful. And he was at a school, they lived in Kitchener-Waterloo, and the school failed them. As an educator, it's hard for me as an educator to see something like that because I'm not like that. And it breaks my heart when I see schools failing children. And I know what happens. I've advocated for quite a few families, and I know what happens. I see it. I see some really good stories too, but the ones that stick with you are the bad stories. And so there came a time where I said to Julie, because I was in Oakville in a different school board, and I'm an administrator in the school board, I'm a vice principal, and I'm a resource in my board of 100 schools. I get phone calls every once in a while saying, Ken, we got a family affected by Tourette, and we're really challenged in the school, can you come help us straighten things out? And I said, of course, absolutely. So I said to Julie, you know what, it's time, why don't we move in together? We're in that point in our relationship, and I'll take care of Nate. I'm going to get him through school. And so when they moved into town, and I sent him to the same school that my boys went to, I wasn't at that school as an administrator, and I called for a case conference. So I want you to learn from this. Like, I know you're not a vice principal in your child's school board, but I'll tell you what I did. I went into the principal, and I said, hi. Well, they already knew me. And I said, listen, just give me a heads up. I'm bringing a student to your school, and I told them my scenario. I'm bringing my stepson to your school. He's got full-blown Tourette's. He is going to be a challenge. I want to support the school, and I want so that we can support each other. Right? And that's the language I use. And then I said, you need to have a case conference to get all hands on deck with this one, or it's going to be tough on the school. It's not going to be just tough on the students, it's going to be tough on the school. So they called in a big case conference, they called in all the specialists, and I said there was mental health. Like there are huge mental health concerns with this student. So we brought them all in, and I told them, and I absolutely believed it 100% because I had seen cases like Nathan before. And I said to them, he is a potential death by misadventure kid. There is a very high likelihood that he's going to end up doing something that is going to get himself killed. He's going to be car surfing, or he's going to get into drugs, or he's going to get into the wrong crowd, and someone's going to stick a knife in him. Like, he's not able to regulate. And I said to them, our only learning goal for the next 2 years is that he learns self-regulation. Do you remember what the other one was, Julie?
Social skill.
And social skill. That's all. I have no academic expectations of him or of you. I just want self-regulation and social skills. And they went, okay. Right? Like I said, he's really smart. Like, he only hears maybe 10% of what goes on in class, and he was reading at level, and his math skills were pretty much at level. Well, I don't know how, because he could barely hold a pencil because he was so animated. Like, he never sat in a seat. So they had, and I don't think we got a full EA that year. We only had like a part-time EA. Because, like, the reality is, we don't have enough EAs for all the kids who need EAs. And in my school board, I can tell you all of our EAs are working in kindergarten classes with kids who have autism, who are runners. And I've got like almost 700 EAs in my board. And that's what they do, like imminent safety concern. And really, I could have argued that Nathan is an imminent safety concern, because I don't know if he would have burst running out of the building into traffic. Like, that's the line that we draw in my school board. Like, is this a kid who can run into traffic? Because, like, I've got kids in grade 7, grade 8 who leave the classroom, but I know they're not going to run into traffic, so okay, let's worry about those kindergarten kids. I know it sounds terrible, but it's triage, right? And here's some pointers for you as parents, okay? When you get, and I know, like I just said about your family, they're gonna make you crazy, and then they're gonna call you crazy, right? Like a bad teacher is the same way. They're gonna drive you crazy, and then they're gonna say, she's crazy. Moving on. Facebook. Don't judge your reality by everyone else's highlight reel. Okay? That's my message to you, because I know the heartbreak you feel when you're on Facebook or social media, people are posting the kids, oh, they're beautiful, wonderful kids, being successful, and you're not there. Right? That people don't put that's the one I put on Facebook. I didn't put the one where I had my hands around Nathan's neck. That would be incriminating. Right? The other thing another message I want you to take home is, don't sweat the small stuff. And write that down. I have a slide for my teachers that says that. Don't sweat the small stuff. Typically, and this is me speaking as a dad, so I can say it, typically it's the dads who have the problems with sweating the small stuff. Sorry, dads. Guilty as charged, right? And you have to learn, like, really? Is that what you want to go to war over? Right? As we say in my business, is that the hill you want to die on? Right? No way, I'm not going to war over that. So swearing, not even a blip on my radar screen. Fuck that. Right? And I say it to my teachers sometimes too behind closed doors. Yeah, like you have to really, like what the big challenges in our home. Focus on put your energy into the big stuff. Don't waste your time nitpicking and nagging at the little stuff. If nagging's not working, don't waste your time. Right? Yeah, like focus, pick a goal, one big goal, and work on it. Let the other stuff go for now. And as a teacher, I often hear, well, if I let him do it, then what about the other kids? Teach. You can do that. Like a story when before Julie moved in with me, and we were early in our relationship, and I was helping her maneuver or get through things at her son's old school. And so they had a case, I said, we need to have a case conference. So we had a case conference. And the psychiatrist was there. He was brilliant. He was great. And he told them everything we'd been saying that they hadn't been listening to. And the teacher said, and I quote, "He's corrupting the minds of the 8-year-olds in my class." Because he had coprolilin, right? And I said to her, listen, I introduced Nathan to my 5-year-old son. And I said to my 5-year-olds, I set him up. I said, Aiden, you're going to meet Nathan. He's got Tourette's just like me. But Nathan says things he doesn't want to say. His brain makes him say fuck, bitch, and shit. And those are words that we don't say. He can't help it. Do you understand, sweetheart? Yes, Daddy. Done. Did my son ever say fuck, bitch, or asshole? Nope. Because he knew we don't say that. And I said to her, you're a teacher. Teach. Tell the kids. You know, like fair doesn't mean equal. Everyone gets what they need to get. So at home, don't worry about your other 2 kids picking up on that. Because you can say, oh, no, I'm not having that. He's got Tourette's. You don't. You ain't got an excuse. Okay? It's okay to have different expectations of your kids. Remember that. And usually you learn that when your kids are older. Like with my kids, one kid just needs a pat on the back, the other guy needs money. You know, like that's it. Right? Like like they all have different needs. Oh yeah, where's my book bag? I want to read you. The teacher in me likes to read stories. Okay, first story. Sorry, no pictures. You're big. Okay. Hope you haven't heard this before. It's called Welcome to Holland. By Emily Pearlie Kingsley. I'm often asked to describe the experience of raising a child with a disability, to try to help people who have not shared that unique experience to understand it, to imagine how it would feel. It's like this. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous vacation trip to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and you make your wonderful plans. The Colosseum, the Michelangelo David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian, and it's all very exciting. After months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags off, and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you say? What do you mean Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life I've dreamed of going to Italy. But there's been a change in the flight plan, and you landed in Holland, and there you must stay. The important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. You must go out and buy new guidebooks, and you must learn a whole new language. And you'll meet a whole new group of people you would never have met. It's just a different place. It's a slower pace than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and you begin to notice that Holland has windmills and Holland has tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy. And they're all bragging about what a wonderful time they had there. And for the rest of your life, you will say, yes, that was where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned. And the pain of that will never, ever, ever go away. Because the loss of that dream is a very significant loss. But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy the very special and the very loving things about Holland. The end. And so many of you know that our kids, there's always a trade-off, right? You've got a kid who flies into rage. You've got a kid who is defiant. You've got all those negatives. But to me, I see the positives are so much higher. Like I truly believe my strengths are in my weaknesses. That's people say, oh, you're like all the things they say to me. None of that would be happening if I was just one of those normies who've been just sailing through life, no problem. Everything just happening to me. I'd be taking things for granted. Like I am the result of my neurology. And there's a lot of bad stuff. Like I've been through a lot of dark stuff. But I think that's what made, like I talk about the negativity that we see from our kids, the awfulizer syndrome that I call it. I was an awfulizer. I was so negative, like the glass is half empty, I never get a full glass, this sucks, you know? And then it's only when I realized that I had that I was able to turn things around. So one thing that I teach teachers, I'm teaching you, is to reflect to your child. So when I have, with Nathan, I do, when I was first getting to know him, I did a lot of, Nathan, are you angry? No. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I just thought that because your face looks really angry right now, and your voice is very angry. And it makes me feel scared. Do you think you might be angry? Yeah? Okay, all right. Because he was unaware of what, and sometimes he wasn't angry. Like a lot of our kids, often, they emote mad when really they're sad, right? And so it's really important that I would help him identify, are you mad or are you sad? And then he would say, I'm sad. So, okay, well, because right now you look like you're mad. And so, like, when you have neurology like mine, like I wasn't cognizant of how my body presented itself, how I looked, how I sounded. Like there was a time with Nathan that I actually, when I could, he's like this now, but when I could still pick him up, there was a time I picked him up, and it was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done. My wife would say, yeah. Because, you know, like, there's that delicate balance. Like, I don't want to be seen as being mean. Absolutely. But I was doing it for him. Not to say, this is what you look like, but you need to know how you're presenting right now. I picked him up and put him in front of a mirror. I said, I want you to see, because like, he was like this, his face was red, and because he was getting bigger, and he was really scaring his mom. And she was really worried, because he was abusive to her. And he's getting bigger now, he's getting the edge on her, and I said, you need to know how you look so you can see this is what your mom sees, and it scares your mom. And that really seemed to work. All right, I'm going to just move on here. Oh yeah, talking about going to Holland. I remember kind of a funny story. One of my colleagues that I worked with, another vice principal, she was sharing with me about how how she got her master's. Like, I've tried 3 times to get my master's, and like, the stuff going on at home, I just can't get it done. Right? Like, I can't juggle all the stuff that I do and do my master's. And she would say, oh yeah, I did my master's, I had my twins, and I would be at the computer working on my master's, and they'd be playing at my feet. And I'm like, fuck you. Shut up! Right? Like, seriously, I don't need to hear that. Yeah, that was her Facebook. No, like, working on your master's at night, kids playing at your feet. Must live on a unicorn farm or something. All right, and I already talked about this, right? And so when when I'm talking to the teachers, and they're worried about if they have a kid in their class who's swearing, they worry that the other thing is, like, I tell them, don't worry about the kids. You teach. You're a teacher, teach the kids. Okay? Teach them to understand and accept. And the teacher, like, there's one kid here, and he's failing at school. And she's got 19 more that are doing fine. And she said to me, I'm worried about my kids. And I'm thinking, you got one kid who's failing, you got 19 who are succeeding, and you're worried about the 19? It's not making any sense to me. The other concern that teachers will tell me is, so what I'm saying, the message in that little anecdote is that I've seen teachers sway a class against a child. I see people nodding their heads because sadly they've seen it too. Okay, it happens. I don't know what if you see that, come talk to me. That's a long conversation. But the other thing is teachers will say to me, I'm worried that if he's swearing, I'm going to get a phone call from parents saying, what the hell's going on in your class? You've got a kid who's swearing, and I don't like it. I can tell you, in 26 years, I've never had a phone call like that, and I don't know anyone who has. And I actually had a conversation yesterday with a teacher, and she said, yeah, you're right. Because I've got this kid in my class, and no one's calling, right? If it's managed appropriately. Quite often, as a teacher, I'll ask the parent for permission. Are you okay if we send a letter home? To the parents, just to give them a heads up. I've never had a parent say no, because ultimately it's helping their child. I would make sure that you get a look at that letter before it goes home, so that you can work cooperatively, collaboratively. Like, I'm not saying you write the letter, because the school board has, criteria. Like, if it is written by a parent, it's got to be vetted through the board, right? Because it's a board message. But work collaboratively, send that letter home, because what is easier to change? A child's neurology or the perception of others, right? And that includes your family and friends, right? When you go to a shopping mall or like sitting in a restaurant with Nathan, and he yells, fucking bitch asshole, like on top of his lungs, and everyone's head whips around, right? The observers are gauging their reaction on you. We just keep eating. Nothing happened. Normal in my life. Like, we say that at home. That's normal in our house. And I'm sure it's normal in your houses too. But we don't go, oh my God. And I know it's hard, right? Like, this is your normal. Accept it. Wear it like a badge of honor. And just move on. Because you can't change your child's neurology. You can change how you look at it. And you can change, not everyone. You can't change everyone. I know. I'm lucky my family gets it. But I know a lot of families that don't. Right? And then you gotta move on. If something's not working, you gotta cut it off. Move on. Survival, right? Let's see. Oh yes, when I was saying swearing isn't on my radar screen as a problem, remember that swearing isn't a behavior, it's a symptom. Accommodate for. Right? That's the big word you're going to use at school. Accommodate. How can you accommodate or support my child's needs? Just bear with me for a second. Yeah, oh, okay. So one of the behaviors that we have at home is Nathan calling his mom a fucking bitch all the time. Fucking bitch, fucking bitch. He lovingly now, well, he doesn't call me now, but he used to call me a fucking pedophile, just like that. 8 years old. Oh yeah, it's funny now. You try being a male teacher, being called that. Like, of anything on earth that he could have called me, he nailed it right on the head. Right? And he was 8. And I asked him a couple years ago, he's 17 now, like just a couple years ago, I said, where did you learn that word? He said, I don't know. I said, well, did you know what it meant when you were 8? He goes, oh yeah. Right? Like our kids are little magnets, like teachers will, like I've heard it over the years in staff rooms. Well, he must have learned it someplace, right? So obviously he must have learned it at home. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, he goes to a school with 500 kids. Like you don't think he learned it there? Right? Like, I don't have a stack of Playboy books sitting on the dinner table. He learned it from me, right? Yeah, so he had these, and they were tics. And we knew he had coprolalia, and we talked about it. But finally I thought, okay, what am I going to do about this? Because, like, after you get called that 30 or 40 times a day, it makes you sad. So I said, Nathan, when you call your mom a fucking bitch, we know, and yeah, see how, I would say it to him, like, get these words out, normalize the words. The reason they're saying those words is because they're not supposed to, right? Autoinhibitory dysfunction in a Tourette brain. And so I said to him, we know that it's a tic, and we know you can't stop it, and we don't want you to stop it. Because if I say stop it, I'm going to make it worse. We're not asking you to stop it. Not asking you to stop saying that, but I need you to apologize for how it makes mom feel. So you're not apologizing for having Tourette's, but you're going to apologize for how she feels. Because that will kind of undo the sadness that comes with being called a fucking bitch all the time. So he says sorry. And over time, we extinguished that tic. By allowing it and rationalizing it, we're able to reduce and eventually, now, I don't know if we've extinguished it or if he's moved on, it's waxed and waned, but he doesn't call his mom fucking bitch anymore. But he used to say sorry all the time. And what do you think?